So I thought about this song. There's a lot of differences. Darcy's not on a stage. He doesn't have a crowd screaming more. But I thought about lyrics.
Lights, camera, bitch, smile. No
If
one said that
we
to him?
we did this last time with Pride and Prejudice where we were putting Taylor songs as a musical, and the idea of a Darcy singing this song
Is
after the
amazing.
rejection, it's all I want in life now. You are listening to AP Taylor Swift, the podcast for Swifties who are all about the lyrics. We're your hosts. I'm Jen.
I'm Monty.
And I'm Jody.
And we are your unofficial professors of Taylor Swift. Hello, and welcome back to another very special summer school episode of AP Taylor Swift. So as a reminder, this summer we are revisiting topics that we did last school year, I guess I'll say, and using those topics to look at the new songs we got from Taylor in the Tortured Poets department. So we've just been mixing it up a little bit this summer, revisiting topics, but looking at new music. And this week we are revisiting the very fun topic of Pride and Prejudice. So originally episode 25, and honestly, that's all I'm going to do on the topic. But before we dive into the songs, well, two things. One, I'm not going to give a summary of the book. Go watch the movie, read the book, or listen to our episode, or Google Spark Notes. I don't care. I'm a former English teacher and I'm saying do it. I don't care. But the book was really fun to revisit.
Permission granted.
Permission granted. And two, as we've been revisiting these topics, we have really enjoyed writing our Substacks. It's been so much fun to go back around on things we've already written about and think about new ways to talk about those things. So I really do recommend subscribing to our Substack. It's totally free. I'm going to say it. You're not going to remember it. It'll be in the show notes, but it's aptaylorswift.substack.com/subscribe. I write it. I never remember the URL, so don't worry if you don't remember it again. We link it
Scroll down
everywhere.
into the show notes. It's linked.
Yeah. But today, we'll see what we decide to write about this. We'll see if any one of us is particularly inspired. But for now, we're just going to talk about some Tortured Poets Department songs and how we want to connect them to Pride and Prejudice. So, Jody, want to kick us off?
Yes, because I have the first song, and I was so excited when I heard this song because I immediately thought of Pride and Prejudice. I will be talking about But Daddy, I Love Him. This is track 6, written by Taylor Swift and Aaron Dessner. And when I heard this song, I was like, this is Lydia and Wickham. This is a Lydia song. This song is fully Lydia. If I back up, oh God, now I have to give a description of Lydia, right? I wasn't prepared. I was not prepared for that.
Oh, Lydia, where do we even start?
Basically, Lydia is the sister that is a bit of a rebel child and goes off on her own, and she runs away with Wickham, who has a really bad reputation. That's basically the TLDR. That's what you'd get on Spark Notes, but you would not ace your paper if that's what you said about Lydia and Wickham, but it's good enough for now. Anyway, the song itself, right from the beginning, she sings, I just learned these people only raise you to cage you. This really set the stage for me in terms of the definition of what society in this novel does to women in that era, which is raising them and grooming women to be wives. That is what the entire book is about. It's centered around the role of women and how they need to find a husband, a woman. Oh God, see, I'm really unprepared for this. It is a truth universally acknowledged.
Yeah, truth you need to acknowledge that a man with fortune must be in want of a wife.
Must be in want of a wife, right? So this whole book is about finding a wife. One of the early lines in this song, I just learned these people only raise you to cage you. They're caging you as in marriage. Anyway, let's go into why I think this song is about Lydia and Wickham specifically. I know he's crazy, but he's the one I want. He was chaos. He was revelry. This is to me just describing Wickham's reputation.
And he's a soldier, army boy, revelry.
Ooh, good call out. Good connection. You know, this whole section towards the end, where she goes, "I'll tell you something right now. I'd rather burn my whole life down than listen to one more second of all this griping." Oh, see, this is the clean version, griping and moaning. It's bitching and moaning.
I love when one of us
See?
gets the clean
Like,
version.
oh shit.
It's the Jane Austen version.
The Jane Austen version. I'll tell you something. It's tell you something about my good name. It's mine alone to disgrace, and that is exactly what Lydia is doing. But except it's not just her own good name that she's disgracing; it's her family's name that she is disgracing by running away with Wickham. But Lydia did not give a shit about what anybody else thought. She wanted Wickham because she saw him as the military man, and that was what she wanted, and that had a status that she wanted as a husband, and she wanted to be a wife.
I just realized that I called Wickham a soldier boy. And I was like, did I say that? Do you think Lydia didn't care, or do you think she actually didn't even know? Like, she's just like, I don't care what anybody says, but she may not have known the full extent.
You mean known about his reputation? Big
Yeah.
reputation. Big.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I always interpret Lydia as a dreamer who was so enveloped in her dream she wasn't always aware of reality. Which I think the most compelling part of that, to me, this is totally outside of the song, is Lydia and Wickham are both evenly punished for their bad decisions, and Lydia's big fault was being a dreamer and marrying a not super great guy, and Wickham's big fault was being like genuinely a piece of trash. Yet their sins, quote unquote, societal sins, were considered on the same level that they had to both be punished the same way.
Because to a certain extent, she still wants to be a wife. So from a society, from like a what's expected of her in society perspective, she's still following what is expected of her. Elizabeth Bennet is more of an outcast in that respect, that she's not specifically, like, her goal isn't to be married. So I think it's an interesting question. Like, but Lydia is certainly disregards her reputation and what that means. Like, that she doesn't quite care about, or her family's reputation at that.
Right. Well, later on in the book, when it does come out that Wickham is in so much debt and there's issues or whatever, at that point it's obvious and out in the open. But at that point, Lydia still sticks by her husband and is like, I love him, or we're so in love.
But Daddy, I love him.
But Daddy, I love him. Yeah. So the song is really perfect. But I was thinking about the sequencing and trying to remember, because initially in the beginning, Lizzie also sticks up for Wickham. Like, she can see no wrong.
She has a little bit of a crush on him. Yeah.
Right. And so I think amongst the female public, it may not have been obvious why he was so awful initially. But at some point she does find out. And I can't remember if Lydia was given any warning. Was Lydia given any warnings about him? I'm trying to remember if she even disregarded it from the beginning, or if she just didn't know initially. I don't remember.
I'm not sure. But I going back to the song, I think a lot of the song, the idea of running with my dress unbuttoned, a lot of it is very carefree, very romanticized. And so I'm not sure if Lydia knew, but I actually think it compares really well to the song, in that I think she wouldn't have cared. And I didn't do it. I almost did. I can fix him. No, really, I can, for the same relationship, because I think that attitude was still there. Yeah, and the big ending of the book is she couldn't fix him. They're kind of they're having just a pretty mediocre life. But it seems like even once she knows, and even when things are poorly, it sounded like Lydia really kept a brave face, and in her mind, she thought things were going great.
Yeah, I don't think she ever sees her husband any differently. She's not like devastated. She's just like, oh, and this was taken care of, and somebody got me out of this mess, and I'm good.
She's very precocious and young, and this song is also very precocious and young. And she literally says in the song, growing up precocious sometimes means not growing up at all. Like, that is Lydia.
Yeah, one thing that I also like with the song choice for that whole scenario is the daddy part. Mr. Bennet, if we just give a moment for this incredible man in this novel, he is pretty chill as far as dads go, especially Regency era dads, I imagine. He just wanted his daughters to be happy and married. And Mrs. Bennet is really the one in the book who is fretting over where all of her daughters will end up.
Fretting's the perfect word.
Yeah, she's literally just fretting around. The only way that I could imagine Mr. Bennett being against one of the matches for his daughters is if the guy is really bad. And in this case, Wickham was that. He was actually such an awful human. He was like so much in debt. He's out gambling everything away. The fact that he needs saving. I mean, he really put Mr. Bennett in a pickle and ultimately has to be saved by, or like bailed out by Darcy. And I just think that the fact that Mr. Bennett would be against, in this song, it's the speaker against her dad and the society trying to convince people that she loves him. I just think it's funny to put it with those characters because Mr. Bennett is such a sweetheart.
The last line that I also wanted to bring in also ties into Mr. Bennett. The elders had convened down at the city hall, as in the song about, people, the elders coming to say, what do we do about this relationship? It can't happen. And that to me felt very similar to Mr. Bennett and Darcy, etc., when they had to go out and search and find Lydia and Wickham and where they ran off to. So I think that Mr. Bennett is in the song as well. He's literally in the title. This is Mr. Bennett's song because she's talking to her daddy, but daddy, I love him. And he's just like, oh, bother.
Face palm.
Yeah, it's a big face palm. Exactly.
Well, I have the next song, and I didn't do it, but I did seriously consider doing Florida. And I think, Monzi, was it you who put it in as a joke in our notion page?
I was waiting for somebody to bring up Florida.
I just wanted to. Yeah, I missed my cue. I really wanted to just come in and scream Florida.
Well, it will not connect.
I did 3 fist pumps for the listeners. It was 3 fist pumps for the exclamation points.
Well, I will not explain it in this song, but I almost did Florida, and a song that I will talk about at the end. I will explain why I didn't do it, but why I almost did it, because I had 2 options. But I just want to acknowledge that because we're skipping it, but we're going to come back to it. The song I did pick was I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, which is track 13, written by Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff, and probably the most famous song, arguably, from this album. I did not reread the book for this recording intentionally because I think there's something really compelling about seeing what parts of a story stick with you after you haven't been in it for a while. And I wanted to just sit with it for a second and say, okay, I haven't read this book since whenever I read it earlier this year, late last year. What is really sticking out to me? And something from the last time I read it that I thought I hadn't really noticed before was how much I respected Darcy for everything he did after being rejected. We know that rejection hurt him. Reading it again, it was very clear that that was incredibly upsetting. So I thought about this song. There's a lot of differences. Darcy's not on a stage. He doesn't have a crowd screaming more. But I thought about lyrics.
Lights, camera, bitch, smile. No one said that to him.
We did this last time with Pride and Prejudice, where we were putting Taylor songs as a musical, and the idea of a Darcy singing this song after the rejection. It's all I want in life now.
I love it.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about lines, particularly like, I keep finding his things in drawers. So, and I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, the story we're getting is I keep getting this reminders of my loss, yet I'm still moving forward. I'm still performing, even though it's really hurtful. And the reason why the respect for Darcy this time was really strong to me was how all of the stuff he did was remedying stuff he had done in relation to Lizzie's family. So in order to resolve the Wickham situation, in order to help Jane, Lizzie's sister, he was constantly, intentionally putting himself around people and reminders of the person who broke his heart. But he knew it was the right thing to do. He knew he had to do it. And the lines of, you're good when you can even do it with a broken heart. In the context of the song, it's more of a good and a kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, I'm so good, come for my job. But I read it in the context of Darcy, of genuinely, he's becoming a good person because he has a broken heart and he's still making the right choices. He didn't take vengeance on Lizzie. That just wasn't in his character, but other people may have done that.
And he had no expectation that she may come back to him or she may say yes. For all he knows, that's it. He shot his shot. She said no. she said a lot of other things, which he took to heart as feedback and decided to go on his way to remedy these. But he never had any expectation that she would one day eventually come around. He just decided to right his wrongs.
Yeah, and I don't think he was necessarily crying or acting like it was his birthday, but I think the heart of that is still he was living his life. He was being a
We
good
don't
friend.
know.
We don't
We
know.
don't know. We do not know. This book follows more Lizzie's perspective. We don't know what Darcy was doing back in Pemberley.
We need a Pride and Prejudice Darcy's version.
I want a Darcy's version.
The other line that I thought connected was that I'm so obsessed with him, but he avoids me like the plague. And again, in this whole context, from Lizzie's side, we actually do know she's avoiding him like the plague. It's a very key plot point how much she's working to avoid him and how fate essentially doesn't allow her to avoid him. Fate keeps pushing them together. And he seems to probably know that. He's very awkward but very kind when they do run into each other, but he's not pursuing her or anything like that. But again, they're just kind of dancing in the same circles, and she's avoiding him and he's righting his wrongs and pushing through it, and it's a totally different tone, and so much of it doesn't exactly fit. But I think the heart of the song of I am in incredible emotional pain, yet I'm going to still go do what I think needs to be done is very much what's happening with Darcy in this essentially the second half of the book. So it's a leap, but I saw the connection was there.
I really like the subtle change of the meaning good and how that changes the song, and it actually fits so well with Darcy.
And we do know he's heartbroken.
Yeah.
He does have a broken heart. And so I think that, again, I agree. I also like the way that you've woven this in. And I also just love, Mouncy, you did this with Haunted because you
Yeah.
said that Haunted was the same scene
Yeah.
in
That proposal
Pride and Prejudice,
scene.
the
Yeah.
proposal scene. And I just love the idea of getting Darcy's perspective and using Taylor's songs to have Darcy's perspective here. It's great.
We love a sensitive boy.
We do. I have kind of the immediate next. Well, it's not immediate. I have the end of the novel. We're going to skip right ahead to when Lizzie comes around and decides that she does, in fact, love Mr. Darcy, because I'm going to cover The Alchemy, which is track 15, written by Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff. I'm not going to lie, I actually picked this song because I realized that we haven't done this song yet in one of our summer school episodes.
I can't believe you picked this song because I was really excited about the song.
Great.
And then I was about to type it in, and then I saw that you already beat me to it. And I was like,
Great.
ah!
Well, we'll do it together. We'll do it together. Again, keep in mind, Lizzie rejected Darcy. Darcy proposed to her, and she was like, absolutely not. And then they're in these circles and they dance around each other, and she's realizes what he did for her family and yada yada yada. And then boom, this happens once every few lifetimes. These chemicals hit me like white wine. And then in the song, what if I told you I'm back? I haven't come around in so long, but I'm coming back so strong. Like literally, she's like, I'm back and I decided that I love you.
What if I told you you're cool? It's forgiven.
Oh, I have that as well. This child's
Under my
play back in
rule.
school.
Yeah.
The bullshit that, when he split, like that child's play that you did to split up Jane and what's his face? Bentley?
Bingley.
Damn it. I like this morning, like literally I was swimming and I was like, what's that name? What's it? Bingley. And then I forgot it. Bentley. Bingley. Anyway, potato, potato. Whatever. The child's play that he did when he split up Jane and Bingley. It's cool. It's forgiven. Literally, my notes say, what's his face? Guys, that's where my head was earlier.
This is a loose episode. Hope
So
you're enjoying
we're
it, listeners.
loosey-goosey.
Tighten it up in editing.
Ditch the clip. No, you can't fix bad content. Editing, there's only so much editing can do.
Spoken like a true marketer.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, there are other lines within this song. Again, this song is about falling in love. You can't deny alchemy is an early form of chemistry. Now debunked, but initially it was what chemistry was initially. So it's interesting that, and she's literally talking about the chemistry that two people have in this song, and that you can't deny it. And then and nothing else, everything else is fake. Amateurs, clowns, compared to what these two people have. And both in the novel, in the scene where Lizzie comes around and realizes that she is in love with Darcy, as well as in the many different movie and TV interpretations, you do get this sense of this aha moment where she
Mhm.
understands, holy shit, this really has hit me and I love this person. So it's a different type of recognition of romance where I feel like, you realize you like someone because you're having these interactions with one another and this attraction builds. This is very different where she initially is so repulsed by Darcy and then he confesses his love and wants to marry her and she's like no, and instead, it's not this slow realization of love, it kinda just hits her, it, like, smacks her right in the face, like, "Oh, shit, I love him, and I'm ready to ditch the clowns, get the crown," and here I'm relating the crown to Pemberley, even though she wasn't in it for his money, but Lizzie does think that most men are clowns, that they're silly, they're frivolous, they're not for her. She's different because she only wants to get married if it's someone she really loves. She's not looking to get married for the sake of marriage, and that is what everybody else is kind of going for when you look at Mr. Collins and Charlotte. Not Charlotte. Yeah,
Yeah,
Charlotte.
Charlotte
I'm
Lucas.
like Sex in the City, Pride and Prejudice, same, same. That's a very good example of Charlotte just needed to get married. Mr. Collins was good enough, even though
Yeah.
if he wasn't great. That's not good enough for Lizzie. Lizzie only wants something that's going to be real and going to be worthy of who she is. And she doesn't want the amateurs, she doesn't want the blokes. I also just like that the British slang in the song, the blokes who warm the benches. And that's something I could see her saying.
Yeah, in the book, the way that she finds out is through a letter, I believe. She finally gets Darcy's letter explaining
Hmm.
everything that he's been up to. And that's her kind of aha moment. Is it does his aunt also spill something? I can't
Yeah,
remember,
there's a
but I
couple
think it was,
different. Well, she's touring
yeah.
Wembley. She's touring Wembley, guys. She tours Wembley. She
Jody's going to
tours
bed after we record. Don't worry, everyone.
uh she tours Pemberley, and that's where I don't know if it's the aunt or it's the caregiver, his caregiver
Yeah.
that she gets glimpses of his life, of Darcy's
Yeah.
life and who he really is and what
Yeah,
his character is
I
like.
think it's like the head housekeeper or something that
Yeah.
she runs into.
Yeah. And then I think there's also a letter that reveals a few things like what he did for Lydia. I think he wanted a chance to explain himself and he had been writing to her and she had been ignoring letters, I believe, and there finally anyway she gets this letter and we read it in our last episode, I believe. We actually read the excerpt when she realizes she's made a mistake. And I think the line in the song that I felt really reminded me of that was because the sign on your heart said it's still reserved for me. Honestly, who are we to fight the alchemy? I just, this idea that he was still signaling to her that he's still there, expecting nothing, not expecting her to say yes, but just wanted to say that it's always going to be her. And she has this realization of everything that he's done and kind of reads between the lines and that too, and recognizes just how much he loves her. Who are they to fight the alchemy?
Well, and I love the word alchemy here. I want to deep dive this song at some point, but I do believe in context of this, it is still relevant. There's multiple interpretations. One to me is alchemy is yes, it's debunked, but in its heyday, it was essentially a form of magic that people were attempting to understand. And so the idea that we have chemistry, which we all know is a word of the chemistry between people, often romantic, not necessarily. I think there's platonic chemistry that can happen, but then you have alchemy, which is a more magical, more mysterious version of chemistry. Is an incredible choice here to say we
Yeah.
understand a lot of chemistry. We can't understand alchemy because
Mhm.
if alchemy were to exist, there would be magical elements to it based on what we understand. There's an argument that all science that we don't understand feels magical, then we can explain it. Just ignore that, everyone. We're talking literary here.
It's chemistry before the science came and made it boring. Alchemy is like before we had the understanding. Because like once you figure it out,
Can you
the
tell this?
mysteriousness is gone.
The AP at AP Taylor Swift is more AP literature, not AP chemistry.
Well,
If you
I
didn't
mean,
know?
I took AP chemistry and it was not fun. But what I'm trying to say is that no, once things are figured out, it's you take away some of that excitement. It becomes logical. It becomes you have
Explainable, understandable,
explainable.
and romance and why you fall for who you fall for or how you fall for someone you once hated is unexplainable.
Unexplainable. Yeah. And
It's
and
magical.
also I like the part of alchemy where you turn something into something else and just don't know how all of a sudden your mind has changed or how that thing has turned and you have no idea. And that kind of feels this way. It's like one second you hate each other, the next second you love each other and it's like, "Oh, something's changed. I have no idea what."
Yeah, it's definitely the other that hate and love are not opposites. They're two sides of the same coin. That indifference is the opposite of love. And I think we see that here. And I think the word alchemy gets to that as well with Lizzie and Darcy of they had very strong feelings towards one another. They just weren't straightforward and they were incredibly complicated. That chemistry, that connection was there really early actually, and it was just took some time and they both had different timelines for it to hit them to turn the common material into gold, which is an alchemy thing. That moment of transmutation hit both of them at different times, but they were starting from really intense but really complicated perspectives. And I think the word alchemy captures that experience more than the word chemistry would. So I think that connection is really cool.
Well, I had the next song and I picked How Did It End? It's track 21. It's written by Aaron Dessner and Taylor Swift. It is going back to a scene that we have already discussed and a scene that I discussed in the first episode. It's that proposal scene, really, really iconic. But this time, I thought this song was actually more from Lizzie's perspective. The reason I thought that at this point, Lizzie's not in love with Mr. Darcy. They don't actually have anything. She still actually very much hates him. But I think she was so caught off guard by that proposal that I think that even if there was something, a friendship, they clearly had been running into each other quite frequently from the time he comes into town to this moment. They were kind of dancing around each other. And even if there was nothing there, something definitely came to an abrupt halt right after the proposal. She was just so caught off guard that she was reeling coming out of this and just in disbelief that this guy could even come at her. It was also the way that he proposed. I think even if there had been something bubbling there, the way that Darcy initially proposed was just so arrogant and tone deaf that I think that was also probably something that caught Lizzie off guard. And so this song, it just starts off, we hereby conduct this post-mortem. He was a hot house flower to my outdoorsman. Maladies were such we could not cure them, and so touch was my birthright became foreign. I just the word post-mortem, this idea of like, how did we get here? How has it come to this? Is kind of my reaction. Come one, come all, it's happening again because I think in the family there was a lot of pressure for Lizzie to get married. Her parents had arranged a match with her to Mr. Collins initially, and she was really not into that proposal. And this idea that she gets to this point with Darcy and then it kind of falls apart. Her family was very like, oh, what happened? Her mom was very eager to see something become there. And then the part that really I felt the connection was say it once again with feeling how the death rattle breathing silenced as the soul was leaving, the deflation of our dreaming, leaving me bereft and reeling. That stanza definitely also put me in Lizzie's head of just try to propose again, try differently. Don't do it the way you did. Like you could have said anything else. How dare you even think that that's what I wanted to hear? Kind of feel like deflation of dreaming and that if there was even anything there, the way that this proposal ends, Lizzie is left just completely reeling and in disbelief.
I actually think I love that you brought this song up, and I definitely see the elements of Lizzie, but I think you could also see it from Darcy's perspective because
Ooh.
he feels
I have a third
bereft.
perspective, so I'll
Of
come in
course you
after
do.
you go.
Is it Bingley? You're like, it's Bingley. Darcy is can be the one conducting the postmortem of like, wait a second, what just happened? Because none of that went the way I thought it should. I don't know what just happened. I don't know if this is the third perspective you're going for, Jen, but the other element of the song that I think relates really nicely to Pride and Prejudice is the society, the
Yeah.
people who are gossiping. We'll tell no one except all of our friends. Like the empathetic hunger are the townspeople. And this is a book about gossipy people who just like to be all up in each other's business and knowing who's marrying who and who's moving in for the summer and high society whatnot.
I definitely could see the walking in circles like she was lost applying to Darcy
Darcy,
and people just being like, "What happened, poor guy?"
Jen,
Yeah,
who do you think it is?
the society was definitely a big part of it. I was thinking about the moment in the story when Bingley just ups and leaves after everyone thought he was on the brink of proposing to Jane.
Ooh,
Oh, that's a
And
good
yeah,
then
one
that's a good one.
too.
the whole town is just constantly, so the empathetic hunger.
Including Jane.
Including
Jane
Jane.
was
Jane
like,
was bereft and reeling for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, so she was absolutely devastated, but she was keeping it to herself pretty well. We get we get Lizzie's perspective of Jane, and we know that Lizzie knows and understands more about Jane than anyone else. So we get that side of Jane, but then we get the feverishly calling their cousins is actually spot on, because in this era, you tend to be related to a lot of the people in your circles. You stay close to your family, and just the idea of the empathetic hunger. We know that they told everyone. In fact, the big moment where you realize it was huge gossip was when Mrs. Bennet stopped talking about it and was just kind of like, oh, the town's better off without him, which Mrs. Bennet is the biggest gossip in town, but it's become the storyline for everyone to talk about when she's trying to downplay it for the sake of her daughter. But Jane's confused, Jane is sad, Jane feels very much abandoned, but the whole town just can't stop talking about it. The one gasp, and then how did it end? The gasps in town of, well, why did Bingley leave? Everyone thought they were about to be engaged, and then he pretty much overnight pieces out, and no one hears anything again from him.
I love that take. I thought also that you were going to say that third could be Mrs. Bennet herself, because also Mrs. Bennet's reaction to just any time any of her daughter's proposals
Bereft.
fall apart is like, how did it end? And then totally bereft, reeling, just
The
like,
whole
are you
book.
sure we can't fix it? And then can you just imagine Miss Bennet like super self-conscious when she's at the market and everybody's gossiping? Like she's like, please stop talking, everything's
Okay,
fine.
this is the Pride and Prejudice song
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
applies to everybody. And this is the point in the Pride and Prejudice the musical where everybody would be singing it, and they would each
Yes.
have their own reasons
Ugh.
for singing it because they each have that feeling in it for a different reason.
This is the pre-intermission song where everyone's
Yes.
had their relationships. Darcy proposes, Bingley is gone, and then they're all singing at different spots. How did it end? And we know the second half is going to be the resolution of all of these broken relationships. We're on it. We're writing it. It's
Pride
happening.
and Prejudice the
Can you hear
musical.
the people singing the song of
No,
angry
no, no,
men?
no, no, no. Mm-mm. That's where you lose me. You lose me at Les Mis.
Well, we have one more song.
Before we really lose it, before nobody else is listening to this.
If we can keep it together long enough. I will preface it with what I was looking for in a song, and then you'll see why I was debating between Florida and the song I chose. A big part of the story to me, again, that stuck with me over time, was how Lizzie just really is so done with everything. There's so many moments, and I talked about this in the last episode, how her relationship with Jane seemed to be, her sister was the most honest and true part of her life. And any experience she had where Jane wasn't around, she was usually just like, wow, I wish Jane was here. Everyone sucks. This is not fun. And she constantly was trying to leave, was trying to go do other things. And so I wanted a song that captured that escapism, the desire for escapism, which Florida totally works for, by the way. I think that could work of, I want to go to Florida. You want to beat the heat. When Jane and Lizzie left to go stay with their aunt and uncle in London, they were beating the heat of the gossip about Jane's relationship. So I think Florida could have worked. However, I think I Hate It Here works even better, which is what I ultimately wanted to go with. So that's track 23, written by Taylor Swift and Aaron Dessner. the lyrics that really sold me were two. One was, I'm lonely, but I'm good. I'm bitter, but I swear I'm fine. And that's just Lizzie. She doesn't want to be married unless it's love, and she's very much okay with it, but then she's kind of sad about it sometimes. Then she's okay with it. So that constant discontent but contentment with her life, and that some of that is the pride that you get, where she's drawn the line in the sand and said, this is where I am and I'm 100% okay with this. I'm a little bit sad about it, but I'm sticking to my guns here. And the other line was, I hate it here, so I will go to secret gardens in my mind. People need a key to get to. I think there's something in I hate it here where it's definitely escapism, but there's a key to the garden. It's not escapism with no one's allowed in, but there's a limited availability situation. And again, we get that with Lizzie. Like I said, Jane always has a key to the secret garden in Jane's and Lizzie's minds. And eventually Charlotte Lucas has one sometimes. That relationship gets weird. And then eventually it's I hate it here and I want to escape. And she does that, but there's still these limited connections to the people around her. But she absolutely does not like most of what's going on around her, particularly her family.
I think Lizzie used to write a lot, right? And that part of her character is based on Jane Austen quite a bit, because Jane Austen, I think, put a lot of herself in Elizabeth Bennet, also used to write a lot, obviously escaped through her writing, but also wasn't a huge fan of many of the things in the society. That's why she uses her work to kind of comment on them, but at the same time was very much a part of it. Like Jane Austen went to all the balls, she did all the things, but also kind of hated a lot of the things about it. And I feel like I see that parallel between the author and that character.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense for both Lizzie and the narrator in this song of being trapped in the society or in the world that you're in, but at least having an outlet. I think that's what you're talking about, Jen. Like, it's not this utter depression of I'm stuck and nothing can help me. There is an outlet. There is a person or, books and writing as an escape to have an escape, to have an outlet for your frustrations, to feel seen, to feel heard so that you're not smothered and overwhelmed by the society you're in. I did have to quickly Google, like, what year was this book written? 1813. So the fact that the song talks about the 1830s, she would be in the future,
Wow. Close
which
though,
would be
very
fun.
close.
I also like the line, tell me something awful, like you are a poet trapped inside the
Mhm.
body of a finance guy. We've talked about this line in some
It's a
of our
perfect
other
line.
summer school sessions. But also Lizzie is very much a romantic. She wants to marry for love. She really appreciates the beauty and all of that. However, as a woman, she needed to marry for financial stability as well. So actually the idea of a poet trapped inside of the body of a finance guy kind of would work out for her, where she would get the poet, she would get the romance, but she would get the financial stability.
Well, now I'm like, is Darcy a poet trapped in the body of a finance guy?
Oh, he might be.
I did see, oh my goodness, I don't remember. Is it Matthew McFadden who played him in the movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
I did see a cut with the I'm looking for a man in finance, 6'5" blue eyes. That was him as Darcy. So that might have been mildly influenced by that Instagram reel.
That works. Yeah, I also love the line, I'll save all my romanticism for my inner life and I'll get lost on purpose. That
Mm.
describes Lizzie to me very nicely.
Yeah, if I had gone the Florida route, I will say I would have talked more about when she goes to London and travels with her aunt and uncle, because there's
So
very
Long
much
London. What about So Long London?
She goes to London though. She
Ooh,
kind of wants to be in
yeah.
London.
I know. That's
London
true. And she
boy.
only leaves when Lydia and Wickham run away with each other. So that is kind of a so long. Had a good run. There's
That's
a
so much more sophisticated. I was thinking that you were going to talk about the Bennett family vacation to Florida. And
Okay, Lydia would love Destin. Don't get me
Lydia
wrong. She
would
would
be all over
thrive in
Destin.
Destin.
Spring break in Destin would be Lydia's
imagining
jam.
Mrs. Bennett packing for Florida and just
She would not like the humidity.
cracking
No.
She would be like, you
Mary,
can beat the heat. I don't want to beat the heat. I don't like swamps.
I feel like Mary and Mr. Collins, which is a weird combo, but I
Kitty.
feel like
Mary and Kitty is
no,
we always forget.
you'll see where I'm
Okay,
going.
keep going.
So
Sorry.
Mary is the like really conservative kind of boring one, And so I imagine
Yeah, the one
her
that we always
and Mr.
forget.
Collins as the street preachers that go down during spring break to try to convert all the sinful college kids. That's what I imagine Lydia out there partying and Mary on the corner just like reading the Bible into like a speaker or something, and Mr. Collins being like on the other corner doing the same thing.
They would represent the many facets of Florida. They would
Jane.
each find a part of Florida that they would feel very at home in.
Part
Wow,
where
honorable
Jody and I-
mention.
Honorable
in
This
this
part where
episode
mention.
Jody
goes
and
to
I
Florida.
start to
To
disagree,
about Florida, which means it's probably time for us to wrap up. Thank you for joining our very slightly chaotic Pride and Prejudice Redux, the Tortured Poets Department edition version of Summer School. Join us next time as we go over another topic for our Summer School edition of AP Taylor Swift. That's all we have for you today on AP Taylor Swift. Be sure to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on your social channel of choice at AP Taylor Swift to stay up to date. And join us next time as we overanalyze and deep dive into the next Taylor Swift song on AP Taylor Swift.